I'm Evan Unruh, motion graphics artist, along with my friend Matt Smith here, who's also a motion graphics artist, art director. So tell me, how did you get started in this field? How did you get into motion graphics?
So I studied graphic design, print-based at Penn State, and started to get interested in After Effects and came out here for an internship and just really fell in love with making things move.
Was there a key moment like where just something clicked for you? Like did you see something or did you have an experience?
I think it's more of the technology brought me into it. I really like to always learn and always stay updated or try new things, and there's more of an ability to do that with the programs at hand.
So what programs do you use most of the time?
Primarily After Effects, Cinema 4D, a little bit of Premiere Pro, and a little bit of Maya.
Okay.
But it's more heavy on the Cinema 4D After Effects.
Right. And you like using those two together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that they've kind of intertwined a little bit, it's a lot easier to get camera data back and forth, and they're beginning to have GPU support for After Effects, so it's improving the workflow.
Do you ever have issues with Cineware trying to talk between the two?
Yes.
Right?
So I don't use that all the time. It's more standard, back in the old day, last year basically, you have Cinema 4D and just do all your work there, and then I'll import the camera data.
So you'll go back to the old the Adobe After Effects Exchange plugin?
Exactly.
Most of the time?
Most of the time, because I've hit it 2 or 3 times where I just get an error, and I just don't want that error, so I know what, I guess I just don't like to deal with problem solving in that sense. It's
right,
more,
yeah.
More the creative side.
It works great so much of the time, but there's that 20% time where it's like it doesn't work at all and the camera data doesn't match and it's kind of a pain.
Exactly.
What type of stuff are you doing, like right now, what type of stuff are you mostly doing in Cinema 4D?
A lot of simulations, using MoGraph, X particles, and then a little bit of 3D modeling. I have a few print designers that always need elements, and so I'll make or model or light those things.
What kind of sims are you doing?
A lot of cloth sims, particle simulations, and
like particles for what? Like swirling pixie dust, kind of like Disney stuff?
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, so for Pan, we did all the social for that, and I had
that's social media.
Yeah, social media. It was tons of pixie dust, revealing words or words turning into pixie dust and floating away.
And cloth is like flags and banners and
flags. I'm currently working on a Santa hat that's flapping back and forth to the beat of music. And
you're a little bit of an expert with hats, if I remember. You did some pretty serious chipmunk hats.
Yeah. I did a what was it for? That was the Country Music Awards for Alvin and the Chipmunks 2.
Yes.
And they wanted Alvin to take off his busing hat, and it was a cowboy hat instead. So I had to track all that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
But I also remember too, that was around the time you made the famous statement, you were doing something in Maya, and you said, if I was doing this in Cinema 4D, I'd be done already.
Exactly. Yeah, especially with motion graphics involving text. They haven't catered to that at all. Cinema 4D, you can literally type kern in program.
Yeah.
So that just saves time. It's more efficient.
But Russ was a big fan of using Maya.
Yes.
and even for text and type. And so what was his justification for that?
It came down to the renderer at the time. I believe it was just the metals and reflections at the time looked nicer. Nowadays you choose and pick what imperfection of the metallic texture you're looking for using Maya, Arnold, V-Ray.
Do you use V-Ray for cinema?
No, I use Octane at home, and we use Physical Renderer, the standard in cinema at work.
Okay.
I'm trying to move that over to Octane though, just because it's so much faster.
So you didn't do any, like last night, we talked a little bit last night, but you didn't do any benchmarks or anything this morning, right? You just slept in?
No. I rebuilt the Santa hat that I was working on.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so just to get the simulation speed down, and I was able to subdivide what I did, like 8 subdivisions. So that's, I don't know how many polygons that was, but it was literally just, it was still moving fluidly.
And that was because of Octane?
No, that was actually
just on
the i7X.
Okay.
That was just purely the performance of the computer versus the trash can that I have at work.
Yeah, that's great. For those of you, who don't know, like to subdivide something, anything, 8 times, and then to be actually able to simulate it and have it move.
Yeah.
And just to be able to move the camera around with that many subdivisions is a big deal.
Yeah, it was class simulation, had, what was it, like 700,000 strands of fur. So it was heavy, and it only took me 10 minutes to like put it together and.
So
start
fur
the
on
movement.
top of the cloth subdivision.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
And so you were able to work with that no problem. Because I work on a trash can all the time, and I know for a fact, like I wouldn't be able to, it would be like.
Yeah, no, and that's the same situation I had when I did that same setup at work. On the Apple computer, it just hung up after like 4 subdivisions. So I kept it at 2, and then just used some motion blur.
Right, and then but the problem with that is then you're sort of guessing at what your render is going to look like. So
right.
with that power, and it seems like everything's going that direction now. The power plus the sort of GPU acceleration is starting to give artists more of that immediate experience of this is what it's going to look like this is what it looks like rendered now, without having to hit the render and go, oh, that looks wrong.
Right.
And then let me come back and render it again tomorrow.
And it gives you a little bit more control. Because you can see stuff more instantly, you start to spend more time on texturing it properly or lighting it properly, versus I'll just do it later. I'll do it in After Effects. Now you can do it in program in Cinema 4D or Maya.
So what's the biggest speed differences, or how much of a difference would you say between like the iX7 and a trash can?
I'd say 2 to 3 times faster. Definitely in my Cinema 4D renders. After Effects, it processes a lot faster while I'm using it, so I can put more layers, more effects. The problem though with being creative and just wanting to like try things all the time is once something goes faster, you figure out a way to make it slow again by adding all your effects.
Right.
And because of the iX7, I can add more effects. I can add a better quality motion blur to something versus I have to stay low, keep my render time low. Right. I can splurge a little bit.
So when you're using After Effects, what's your biggest hang up? Where does the hardware really help?
The biggest hang up is the actual rendering.
Rendering or RAM previewing?
Rendering. Okay. RAM previewing, I can always drop down the quality to 1/4 if I have to. But actual rendering, it's like schedule your lunch break around it. If it's going to take super long, you can't really do much with it unless you have third-party apps to render in the background.
Do you multi-machine, or you usually render on one machine, or you
render on one machine just of my limitation where I'm working. Okay. But ideally, yeah, that would be what I would do is have a few machines and set them up that way.
See, because for me, it's more because like where I work, I guess we have a render farm. So like that's, but in my moment to moment, day to day, like waiting for that RAM preview it's like, I could wait 2, 3, 4 minutes for that sucker to load up so that I can see it, or I could drop down the quality, but sometimes it's just like the thing you were talking about with Octane, which we'll get into, but it's like you can't see it, you can't really judge it at the full quality. You have to do that guesswork that we've always had to do as motion graphic artists.
Yeah, well, to get around that, I actually pre-render a lot. So like I'll actually, if I have something that I'm happy with, in the background or it's just one element that takes a while, I'll just render that first once I'm happy with it, and then I'll use that footage.
Do you actually like set up proxies, or you just pre-render and then bring it in?
Sometimes I set up proxies, but that gets harder when I have to collect the files later. I just usually on a side SSD, I'll just render it to that, and then I can read from there.
So in terms of that rendering, how much time do you save, or how much faster is the i7X than just the trash can?
Again, it's like 2 to 3 times faster during the render. RAM preview, I have the GPU acceleration on, and I don't know, what the bandwidth that it's actually using on that, but it's noticeably faster.
So what's your experience like using Octane in Cinema 4D?
It was actually pretty eye-opening. You've got your progressive render in Cinema already. You can do your little preview window while you're working, but Octane is just so instant. Assuming you have 1 or 2 decent graphics cards, it's pretty instant. Like you turn the camera in window and it's already figuring out the new calculation.
Is it integrated into your workflow? Like, because you have in Cinema, you've got the interactive preview window, right, where you can have that. Do you have to have something like that up, or does it have its own separate window?
It has its own separate window.
Okay.
So you're still working on the side in your Cinema window, and then your other viewport is basically the live texturing, lighting render coming.
And so you just leave that, and as you work, it just updates as you go. So you don't ever have to like click render or anything like that. It's just basically live.
It's live up until once you add a new object. So say you have a new cube that you added, you just have to refresh, and then it loads that geometry. So it just needs to store the geometry, and then any texture information that you add to that, that's when it's live.
Okay.
So you have your text that you're about to animate. Now you can just do iteration after iteration of like the look and feel of that text live.
So let's say I'm doing a heavy texture. Let's say I'm doing something with lots of reflections, lots of refractions, let's say. So let's say it's glass. So it's got both the reflections, it's reflecting the environment, and it's refracting as well. Like, is it still instant with Octane?
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's sweet.
Yeah, you can literally change the roughness of the reflection. So live.
See, I mean, that's going
and it's minuscule too. You're just changing like little things, or you can bump it way up, and it's live. You can say, you just get the feel of what you want it to be instant, and then you're waiting for the render time, to get the final render, and that's depending on the reflections, what's involved.
Yeah.
It could be the same as just using Cinema 4D physical renderer,
right?
But all that work to get to that moment was so much faster.
So is it live? Like I can scrub it and I can watch it and then just say, okay, 74% right there, or is it I scrub it to 74, let go, oh that looks pretty good, and go to 76 and let go? You know what I mean? There's like that. That's a big difference in terms of time and workflow.
It'll update as you play. So it's not live for animation.
It's not waiting for you to release before it updates. Like it'll update just automatically.
Yeah. So once you get to it, it's there.
So what's your prediction for how long that's going to? Because that's clearly going to become the way everybody who's using computers is going to work. Octane, or whether it be their competitors, it's going to become that way. Because once it catches on, no one's going to stand for working the old way because it's archaic. So how long do you think it'll be before that technology is just a given?
I'd say the next year or two, because I know the move to have all these actually I don't know enough about the computer chip side, but I know that I think Intel just came out with the 72 core processor, so I don't know if that's going to start combating the graphics cards or not. But
right. Right. Well, I mean, everybody's going to want to get in on it because otherwise, it's like let's buy stock in Octane now.
Right.
Right.
But no, I mean it is the leading edge of
Yeah.
of that technology, and I know they have a live interface that you can actually check out, sample renders, and you can adjust the settings, and it's pretty much what you would see on your computer. A little slower because you're going over the cloud and
Right.
you're not using your actual graphics cards. But
What's it been like using the i7X, and what's your experience been?
it's been extremely pleasant. My previous machine was just at the time a pretty decent iMac, and I had always used the Mac Pros at work, so I wanted something that was at least as good as that, and this is just way better, even more so than the new trash can design that they came out with. It's just geared towards what I need to do. I can edit photography, I can simulate 3D animations. After Effects, Premiere Pro all work way faster than most of the stuff I do at work. So.
Mm-hmm. So you were telling me you use Premiere Pro, and you've actually noticed a difference using the i7X with Premiere Pro. What's that been like?
That's been great. Actually, I did a few side projects, just cutting video together, and it's just more fluid. I can scrub through video faster. It does have GPU acceleration, so adding your different color looks and stuff is more instant. And then again, you can basically just scrub through your look and
Do you use looks at all?
I do.
Was that Motion Builder looks? Like to use that suite?
Yeah, the Magic Bullet looks.
Magic Bullet.
Yeah.
And can you scrub that stuff live? Is that?
That's a little slower.
Yeah. Okay.
But I know that they're trying to add the GPU acceleration even more so in the Adobe products, so that could change in the next year or two. But
because then at that point you're getting into really like editing with full color correction. Like you don't have to okay, now I'm going to go turn off my color correction so I can go edit. You can actually just work with it on and really see what it's going to look like as you're working.
Yeah. And then the integration to Premiere Pro to After Effects is pretty seamless as well.
Huge.
So, and then that goes full circle. You can edit, bring it back into After Effects, bring in your Cinema 4D. It's just one package, and if your machine can handle all of that, then you don't need 3 people working on the same project.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit like with the integration with Cinema 4D and the Adobe products. It's almost like it's part of the Adobe suite because they've worked so hard compared to something like Maya, where they won't take each other's phone calls, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So okay, for you, with all this, so you started out at Penn State and you went, oh, motion, it's cool, and there's all this new technology, and you're always learning, and now you've got this hardware and you've got this leading edge type of technology. What do you want to achieve, and what do you hope to achieve with your work?
For me, it's just enjoying what I do, trying to find new ways to kind of push that. I get excited every time something new comes out, and I can kind of add to that conversation. Like I can do something with it that might not have been thought of, or add it to something that I used to do, but now it's 10 times faster. But a lot of what I do is really just to kind of bring joy to other people. I really enjoy going to the theater and being able to see people's reactions to whatever trailer's out that I may or may not have contributed to, but it's just that feeling of excitement that people get from our industry.